The Salem Witch House was built in 1642 and bought by Jonathan Corwin and his wife Elizabeth Gibbs in 1675. Jonathan Corwin purchased the structure when it was only an incomplete timber frame. He was 24 years old at the time, and he lived there for more than 40 years. The house remained in the Corwin family until the mid-1800s. This is what the witch house looked like in 1675, and this is what the witch house looks like today. These next few pictures is what the interior of the witch house looked like. This is the last building standing to prove that there were actual witch trials that took place. Although there is no picture evidence on Jonathan Corwin and Elizabeth Gibbs, there is still a lot of facts behind their life. Jonathan Corwin married Elizabeth Gibbs, widow of Robert Gibbs, in 1675. They had 10 children. One of them was George Corwin, who after his studies at Harvard became the minister at the First Church in Salem. Jonathan Corwin served as a representative for Salem in the Massachusetts legislature. He was also appointed to the Superior Court of Massachusetts. Corwin was also a local magistrate for Salem, which is how he became involved with the 1692 witch trials. Beginning in the late 1680s, he served as a representative for Salem in the Massachusetts Bay Colony legislature. He also served for a few years as a probate judge for Essex County. Jonathan Corwin was born December 10, 1640, and died June 9, 1718. He was a wealthy New England merchant and a judge in the Salem, Massachusetts area who was also involved in the Salem witch trials. Between 1678 and 1690, the Corwins had 10 children, 5 sons and 5 daughters. 6 of the children died before the age of 25, and the 2 others died at a very young age. Only 1 daughter, Elizabeth, and 1 son, George, lived long enough to marry and have kids of their own. Not only was Jonathan Corwin a judge at the witch trials, but he was also one of the main reasons why so many innocent people got killed at the witch trials. A total of 24 known men and women were accused of being witches and were hung, pressed to death, or died in prison. Along with that, about 100 more men and women were blamed for being witches and sent to jail without even having a chance to speak and stand up for themselves. These next few pictures are of the gravestones of the men and women who were accused of being witches and got killed. Sarah Good was hung on July 19, 1692. Susanna Martin was hung July 19, 1692. Wilmot Red of Marblehead was hung September 22, 1692. John Proctor was hung August 19, 1692. Rebecca Nurse was hung July 19, 1692. Giles Corey was pressed to death on September 19, 1692. The process of being pressed to death is when the townspeople pile rocks on top of your body until you suffocate and die of internal bleeds from the amount of pressure on your body from the rocks. Elizabeth Howe was hung on July 19, 1692. Bridget Bishop was hung June 10, 1692. Anne Puditer was hung September 22, 1692. Mary Parker was hung September 22, 1692. Life in 17th century Salem was very strict. Games and toys were not allowed, and young girls were supposed to focus on completing their chores. But there were 2 girls who went against these rules. Their names were Abigail Williams and her younger cousin Betty Paris. These 2 young girls had a slave cooking for them in their home one night. The slave's name was Tituba. The 2 girls spent a lot of time with her that night, and Tituba was having fun playing magic tricks and telling them fortunes. But these types of activities were forbidden by the Puritan Code. By January, the 2 girls began acting strange and doing outrageous things, such as twitching, screaming, and falling on the floor and yelling for no reason. Abigail's father had the town's doctor come in and see what's wrong, and he said that the girls were the victims of a witchcraft. The last Sunday in January is when people began to take action in the girls' behavior. During church that day, Betty fell down and started screaming and making strange noises, such as barking. Abigail began to do the same thing soon after. Frightened by all of this, the townspeople begged the two girls to identify the tormentor, and the girls yelled out the names, Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tituba. Very quickly, these women became social outcasts, despised and untrusted. Tituba was beaten so badly that out of horror she confessed that she was a witch. The girls began pointing fingers to random innocent townspeople, claiming that the souls of other witches would visit and hurt them. By the time it was spring, the girls had gotten over 150 people in jail, including the governor's wife. These accusations lasted up until October. After the governor's wife was put in jail, he ordered the trials to stop and let those who were in prison out. Everyone took action and did as told, and in a few months the trials were over and everyone was back to their normal lives, not knowing whether Abigail and Betty were playing a joke or if it was completely serious. Once everyone's lives went back to normal, so did Abigail and Betty's. They got married, moved away, and no one ever heard from them again. These witch trials proved just how gullible people were to believe teenage girls that there was such thing as witches. And this is the end of the Salem witch trials.
Roll the credits.